Welcome back to Unleash Success. This is your host, Corey Corpodian. Today starts our first episode where I interview everyday entrepreneurs, people making $1,000 to $10,000 a month, and some of them even more than that. We're going to go through their day-to-day strategies so we can teach you how to become successful yourself. If you're interested in starting your own online business, or you want to know how to start a business or even grow your own business, be sure to go to unleashsuccess.com/startup to be able to download the free guide that I put together, whether you've got a product, a service, or you don't even have a product. I'll be able to teach you how to start making money today. So that, again, that is www.unleashsuccess.com/startup. The link will be in the show notes. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please go do that right now. And again, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, I'm going to be dedicating a lot more time in 2020 towards growing the YouTube channel. And if you'll see the production quality on the video we just released for episode 87 with Sam Bakhtiar, that is one awesome interview. And it's really cool because we do the interview in front of his amazing black Lamborghini. That was just a beautiful car, and in his house. It was a phenomenal interview. If you listen to it, great. If you want to check it out, go to YouTube. The link again will be in the show notes. And thanks for subscribing. And now for today's episode.
Welcome to the Unleash Success Podcast, where we break down the secrets of success to give you real tools and strategies that get real results. And now, here's your host, Corey Corpodian.
Welcome back to another episode of Unleash Success. This is your host, Corey Corpodian. Today, we are interviewing Alex Terranova, the founder of DreamMason. We're actually in his podcast studio down here in Pacific Beach, California. And we're going to talk to him about why he created the book Fictional Authenticity, what that really means to him, and how he's turned his coaching business into a thriving, successful business over the last 5 years. Alex, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming into my studio. I feel like it's like a sports team, right? Like we have you. It's like I have home court advantage, but it's like you're going to dominate. It's your show.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. And actually, originally when we talked about doing this episode, over Skype, it just doesn't have the same thing as in person. So thanks for inviting us down here. I want to start by, I read a lot about you and very interested in it. Why did you create DreamMason? And if you could take us back, because I know you said you kind of had this epiphany in Costa Rica. What happened there? What was going on in your life that you were like, you know what, I need to take this to the next level?
Well, DreamMason started actually, like the concept of the word DreamMason started before that. And it actually came out of insecurity and fear, which is pretty funny to think that like I created something very cool out of a total place of fear and insecurity. So I remember I was sitting on my parents' balcony in Los Angeles, and I was living in New York at the time. And I'd like come home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I was like 3 to 6 months into the most intense, aggressive coach training program that I think exists in the world. And while I was transforming and buying into what the training I was getting, I also hated the term life coach. Like I don't care what anyone said that it doesn't mean we're coaching your life. It just didn't feel like authentic and real for me. And I didn't like the term business coach. Like that has the more consulty feel. Like I'm going to tell you how to run your business. And I was like, I gotta come up with something that actually, if you don't like what you are, how can you be it, right? Like, how can I say it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, the life coach thing. I love how like there's a bunch of 22-year-olds that are life coach. I'm like, man, you haven't even lived your life yet, right?
Well, and I think that's the thing. And like being a life coach, I think if you do it right, you don't actually have to have any life experience. The idea is that you're actually asking questions to help people figure out their own life.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right? Like people often are like, I actually had somebody say to me yesterday, I was talking about a client that I have is very, very successful, vastly more successful than me. And they were like, do you ever feel like unqualified to work with somebody? And I was like, I might have moments, but ultimately I remember that my job isn't to tell this person how to live their life. My job is to simply be curious, ask questions, and get them to see things that they didn't see before. And in that, my not knowing is actually better, because if I know the right way, then I shouldn't say the right way. If I know a way, they're going to do it my way, which might not be their way. And so I think a real coach isn't somebody who has all the answers. It's somebody who is curious and is getting you to figure out your own answers, but also somebody who's committed to what you said you wanted, like even when you don't want it anymore, right? Like you might not feel like it anymore, but I'm like, hey, you said you wanted this. So it doesn't matter. I don't care how you feel right now.
Right.
But so to go back, I sat there and I was like, I'm like on my phone on my thesaurus, like trying to figure out like what could I call my business, and I something hit me like, okay, well, what I'm really doing is helping people create their dreams. Because like I'm not working with, if you're homeless or you have 5 kids and can barely pay the rent, like that's not what I'm doing, right? This is like, I'm working with people that are successful, crushing it, and still are like maybe unfulfilled, unhappy, or want even more, right? They're totally different categories.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, man, this is like about dreams, building dreams. And like, I'm like piecing this together, right? Using a thesaurus. And all of a sudden I see Mason, I see dreams. I'm like, and I start Googling DreamMason and there's nothing. And I realized, wait, you just invented a word, which is pretty awesome, right? So now I actually own the trademark on the word DreamMason.
Nice.
And that's how it started. And I had no idea what it would evolve to. And you referenced like the epiphany. So ultimately that piece came... So DreamMason evolved from there. The epiphany is what got me into this place of wanting to change my life. I used to open restaurants and bars for a living. So I'd opened about 15 or 16 restaurants and bars across like 7 or 8 states. I was had done things from being like a director of operations, a director of franchise operations, overseeing anywhere from like, I think the most I ever oversaw was like 7 or 8 restaurants. Hired and trained hundreds of managers. And I was really good at it. And I was also empty, unfulfilled, felt like my life was like Groundhog Day.
So how old were you? I mean, obviously you've established some level of success in your life, and then you're kind of just struggling with that fulfillment. How old are you at this stage in life? And, how many times, because I think a lot of people, they go through life and they're not able to postpone, short-term gratification. So somebody listening to this might be like, yeah, like I feel like my week was Groundhog Day. And it's like, was it really a week, a month? I mean, usually it's years. So for you, like how old were you? How long have you been doing it for?
So I think I remember being in my mid-20s being like, man, I can't bartend forever. Like what happens when I'm 50 or 60? Like I remember, and I love bartending. I think bartending is like the most fun job in the world. But I remember thinking, what's going to happen when I'm 45? Or what if I have a family? Like it just didn't seem like it would fit. Obviously it's possible, but it wasn't going to fit for me. And so I got into, at 25, I opened my first restaurant. So I started going into like the management path. And then I was like, oh, I'll open my own restaurants. I did some like food reality shows. I was like, well, this is fun. This is like a new venture. And I started to like look at maybe opening my own places, developing concepts, doing these food shows. And at 30, I got offered a job in New York City. And at that time, like from between 28 and 30, I feel like I hit, like I want to say spiritual or emotional rock bottom. I was drinking most nights. And I was drinking not drinking like, hey, let's go drink and have fun. I was like drinking to cover up my feelings. I was drinking because I was like unhappy. I was drinking. It's like if I couldn't get laid, get drunk. And the thing was, I recognized I'd wake up in the morning and it would be like, all right, let's go back to the gym. Let's like do it all again. And it was all like seeking. Dude, I had an Audi A5 and I didn't make enough money to have an Audi A5, but everything was seeking outside, like, how do I be happy inside from outside sources, right? Having a nice car, looking good, trying to sleep with hot girls, like make money, get drunk, be at the coolest like bars in Venice Beach, like, and that period of 20 to 30 when I got offered that job in New York City, I think I thought like, oh, well, if I go to New York, like I'll run away, like subconsciously, right? Not consciously. It was a good opportunity, but I think I thought like I would leave my problems behind. And they're first world, very lucky problems. Right. But I think I thought like, oh, maybe I'll be happy in New York. Like maybe everything will be different there. And when I got there, it was exactly the same stuff, right?
Yeah, well, you took you with you.
Yeah. It's the only thing I took with me, basically. And so from 30 to 32, I was like still in that. Now, I wasn't doing as much of because I was running this group, but I was still like negative and pissed off all the time. And I wasn't having like the level of connection with people I wanted to have. And at 32, I'm in Costa Rica with my family, and my cousin asks she asks everyone what we're grateful for. And everybody goes around and says, family, health, like whatever. And it gets to me. And I remember like this, I don't know what people, like what you believe, God, a monkey in the sky that throws bananas, like the universe, energy, whatever. Something like punched me right in the nose. And I describe it as a punch in the nose because if you get punched in the nose, you cry, right? Your eyes well up in water. And in a moment when it was my turn, I burst into tears, like fell apart. I remember my girlfriend at the time was sitting here, like looking at me like, what the hell is going on? My family, like slack-jawed looking at me. And in the moment, I don't know what happened, right? Like I can speculate. But in hindsight, when I look back, I think for the first time I realized like, oh my God, I have everything and I'm not grateful for any of it. And all I want is more money, to look better, have a better girl, have a better job, like it was just like all this incessant next ego-driven life. And in that moment, I truly feel like I woke up and was like, I can't keep living like this. Life can't be about like hotter girls and better cars and money. Like there's got to be something else.
Right. Man, that's incredible. It's funny, it's like the idea of being grateful and then realizing that you have so much and that you're ungrateful. It's funny because I was like 28 years old before I finally woke up, but it was after I felt like emotionally, like I should have had everything too. I was like, I graduated from residency. I was an orthodontist. I was board certified. I'm living in Southern California. I have a nice car, and I'm just like not worrying about anything financially, and I'm just miserable as well. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But the truth is that we've got like these rules about what we expect life should be like, and when it's not like that, it doesn't meet our expectations. We experience this unhappiness, which for some, and when it's extreme, can create extreme pain. Yeah. In that moment, you said you started crying. What was your answer?
What I remember my answer was, now again, memories are so inaccurate, right? Yeah. Like if you look up any study on the brain and memories, you'll find that we don't remember anything actually the way that it is. Nobody does. But what I remember is that I remember saying, I'm grateful like to all of them, my family. I have the most amazing supportive family, right? Just like everyone else's. I go home at Thanksgiving and it's a shit show, but they're still amazing and they're loving. And ultimately we all care about each other. And even in the shit show, we get along and we want the best for each other. And I think that was one main thing, that no matter what I've ever done in my life, they support me. Cool. And I think at the same time too, I was like, man, I'm healthy, right? Like if you don't have your health, like everything from there, like you can't, the one, I say like people make excuses for time, commitment, and money. But if you don't have your health, that's the one that like I can't, you know what I mean? Like I can't say, if you're sick, it's hard to do anything, right? Like you're that part of you that enables you to get up and go and create is like damaged.
So you're grateful for your family, which having a strong support system is incredibly helpful. Yeah. And I mean, that's probably a big reason why you're a coach and help people, but also to your health. So it's like from there, what made you say, all right, you know what? I'm going to change everything in my life.
It doesn't honestly make any sense. Like, and I think the point you made before, I want to touch it because it's a great actual reflection of what I do as a coach. When you said before, you basically checked all the boxes, right? I became I went to medical school. Became an orthodontist. I like had all these things. You did what somebody else somewhere said, this is what's going to give you a good life, right?
100%, yeah.
So when we were talking about like life coaching before, that's why a coach that tells you what to do doesn't make any sense. Because why would you pay someone to tell you what to do? It exists everywhere. Just go ask a guy on the street what to do. There's like, look, if you want to sit with Jeff Bezos and like what to do, or Bill Gates, by all means, please, right? Tony Robbins, Oprah, like please let them tell you what to do. But most people, like that's how we got here, right? That's how I ended up in a field being really successful, and you did, because we followed what people or society, instead of actually following like our own heart and finding our own path, which I would say is what we're doing now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So sorry, I had to go back and say that.
No, I appreciate it. I was just, you're there in Costa Rica, you're successful, you're suddenly grateful, and now you're like, all right, well, I'm going to change my entire life. I'm going to start this. I'm going to create DreamMason. And this is like 5 years ago, so obviously you've done it. Yeah. But what made you do that? What motivated you?
So I didn't even know there was a thing called coaching at that time. Never met a coach in my life. I knew who Tony Robbins was. I knew like some personal development people, but I didn't know. I saw them as like they're motivational speakers. Like that's what they did. They're like, they do these big events, right?
It's so funny. I just jump in real quick. Yeah. It's like, I knew about Tony Robbins in college too. And I was like, oh, that motivation guy. I was like, I don't need that. Like, I don't need whatever he's offering, like whatever. And you just see him and he's just got the big hands from Shallow Hal, right? And you're like, all right, whatever that guy is.
Yeah, exactly. Like you, and I know there are like these people write books, and I like heard of the law of attraction in college, and I would like listen to stuff like that. Like it made me feel good, but I didn't actually practice any of it or do anything. And so, and again, I had no idea what coaches are. So when I came back from Costa Rica, I said to my girlfriend at the time, I'm going to do everything different. And she was like, what are you talking about? Well, I've been living my life one way, and it hasn't worked, right? It's not producing the result I want. So if I continue to live my life the same way I've been living it, I'm going to continue to get the same results I've always gotten. That's just like simple, but yet we all do this all the time, right? Like, and I didn't know anything else, and I had no basis of what to do. So I just, like, I call it like light switching my life. Like I just flipped the switch, and I looked at where I was spending my time. So I used to be the most like addicted sports fan. I was like watching NBA on TNT, NBA on TBS, like Fox Sports games, like going to, watching, I was in New York at the time, so I'd watch the Laker games on the West Coast, the New York teams on the East Coast. And I'd be, DVRing every TV show. And when I would work out, it was just like music and shows on my phone. What I realized was like, man, I spend a lot of time supporting other people living their dreams. And all that time is me not at all advancing my own life. And like, I don't know how I realized that because I remember saying to my dad, I'm not watching football anymore. I also was like a crazy USC fan. And my dad was like, what do you mean? You haven't like now watched a USC game in like 12 years. And I was like, you know what? When those guys are coming to watch me do what I do for a living, I'll watch them do what they do for a living.
I don't think I could give up football yet, but I get exactly what you're saying.
I have no issue with I have no issue with sports.
Sure.
Right? I have an issue with the fact that I wasn't living my life, and I was I was distracting my own existence by like following someone else follow their dreams. Right?
Man, I love what you said too. It is so true. I mean, it's funny because I lived in New York too, right? So that's where I went to residency and dental school, and there were times where it was basketball playoffs, and I was like, all right, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and then playoffs ended one summer, and I was like, what do I do with my life, right? Because I was just going to school and I was like in studying or sports and it was like drinking. And then it was like, all right, what should I do? And I didn't realize what I should do until much later in life. But it's funny, like NFL season's right now and I absolutely love football. So like every Sunday, I'm like, all right, let's go watch it. And it's like you've been doing it, and we're almost to the playoffs here, and we're like, or what, fantasy football playoffs, anyways. And so I'm like, and I'm sitting there like, man, you know what? Maybe I should take off the morning games, get some stuff done, go do something for myself. But it does take up a lot of time, and if you haven't built up something to support your own dreams, I fully support what you're saying that you shouldn't spend time supporting someone else's dreams unless that's what you want. Like,
exactly. Look, if it brings you joy and happiness and you can say, hey, this is working for me, by all means, like, watch every game ever. But I could go, it wasn't working for me, right? Like, that's the thing. It's sometimes people are like, I'll say, like, how early I wake up, and people are like, well, it doesn't actually matter what time you wake up. And I'm like, you're right. But is the time that you're waking up working for you? Are you getting the results that you want to get? If not, that's crazy to keep waking up at that time.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. I canceled my cable. which was huge. I was like the little kid who wanted cable so bad, and our parents wouldn't get it for us, and they finally got it for us, and I was like on the couch watching cable all the time. And so then as an adult, I like, how could I not have cable? But I canceled my cable. I kept Netflix because my girlfriend was like, what, we're not going to like watch movies together or whatever. And those were the first two things I did. And then I said, I really haven't read a book in my life. I like went to college, I didn't read books. In high school, I didn't read books. Like maybe, you know, like here and there, but like not really. And every successful person reads. Like maybe not everyone, but you know, it seems like they do. And I was like, I'm going to start reading books, and I'm going to start reading with all this time that I'm now freed up. I'm going to read a book a week. So a book a year, let's say, to a book a week is crazy. I didn't read a book 52 books that first year. I read 35. And dude, it's amazing what happens when you read 35 books. I don't know how much you read, but like my brain started to think different. Like the way I used to not read because I would get lost on the page. I would read slow. I wouldn't take in what I read. And what I realized was it was just like practice like anything else. If I kept doing it, I would get better. And then there was like, I remember like 3-4 months in, I read a book in a day. I read like a Robert Kiyosaki, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad in a day. And I was like, whoa, like this is like, that was for somebody who doesn't read books, right? And actually for a guy who I had like got diagnosed with a bunch of learning disabilities when I was a kid. So reading was really hard. Writing was really hard. So for me to read a book in a day and actually know what I read was like a huge turning point in my life. I also cut down on my drinking big time. Like I still drink. I don't think there's anything wrong with like, it's all about like if you have a problem, maybe you shouldn't, but I didn't have a problem. I was just using it as a substitute. So I decided, hey, I'm going to drink, you know, if I'm in a social situation at a party, that's fine. But I'm not just going to say, well, it's Tuesday night and I'm bored, so let's go get drunk.
Yep. Yeah.
So I did that, and I changed some of my diet. Like I cut back on like I used to eat like, man, if you went in my kitchen, it was like all GNC products. They like some things were like glowing in the dark when you drink them. And I was like, if I'm like cleaning up everything, let's clean up everything. And I kind of went to like more whole foods. And I just like said, I don't need to eat meat at like every meal of the day. Yeah. And so I just started making like changes that actually had me feel better. That was where I started. And that was things I knew that I could do.
I was curious too, like you read 35 books in that first year. What do you think were some of the most impactful books that you read that really you're like, oh my God? And actually you mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a book that I didn't read till I was like 28, 29 years old. Because same thing, I read science books. I didn't read like personal development and health books. Yeah. And that book, I was like, I just bought my place and I was like, damn it, I should have.
That's awesome.
I mean, my place is a great place. I love it. But I was like, I should have invested into a fourplex. And like that changed the way I thought about assets so much and cash flow completely. And I loved it. So like that was one book that really impacted me. But what were some other books that impacted you in that first year?
Just like from memory, because it's like almost 5 years ago now. I remember that one. And I remember Simon Sinek the first time, like I found out about him. I thought Simon Sinek was like a god. Like just the way he would talk and think like was different. I hadn't heard the things he was talking about. So I remember reading Find Your Why or Start With Why. Leaders Eat Last, which I think I still think Leaders Eat Last is one of the best books I've ever read. I read things like, I think I read like 2 Donald Trump books, like 2 of his like market, he didn't write them, right? Like, but, and this is 5 years ago. This is way before him being a president and being who he is in the world now. He was just a business guy, right? Who wrote business books. But I remember reading Kiyosaki, which led me to, he talks about, they have stuff together. So I went to I read like 2 of his business books. I read Phil Jackson's like 9 Rings.
Nice. I haven't read that one actually. I love Phil Jackson though, and obviously what he's done is just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But I haven't read it, but is it good?
Oh, it's fantastic. And I think what I was like doing was like if you look at the people I just mentioned, like Og Mandingo, I think his name is. He's like a way old school like personal development guy, like Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn. I haven't heard of it.
So he has like a bunch of books that, you know, I would find stuff like on the Kindle or whatever, but his stuff was really good too. But I was looking for not the same, because like, look, you have like Trump, Kiyosaki, a personal development guy, Simon Sinek. They were all different. Phil Jackson, right? They're all people that are giving you information in whatever they say their expertise is to grow your life, but it's all very different. And it's all from different paradigms, right? The way that Trump and Kawasaki thinks is so different from the way Phil Jackson thinks. And I think that was probably one of the best things I got, was this idea that like, hey, this isn't right and this isn't right. And that's not right and that's not right. There's no right. It's like there is no
whatever works for you, right?
Exactly.
And or whatever, right? It's whatever you can manage to be able to use for yourself to become successful. It's funny. I've interviewed over 100 people, and I've been around people who have built million to multi-million to even billion-dollar businesses. And they're like, you should absolutely do this one thing. Like, you talk about waking up early. People are like, you absolutely should wake up early. And I know people who are successful who stay up late.
Sure.
And they wake up at 10. I think I read an article that Jeff Bezos actually doesn't even really start working. He's like, he goes with his kids, has a coffee, just hangs out.
Yeah.
And he's the wealthiest man in the world. Looking back, like, what were some of the habits, the daily habits that you do? And what's your routine now that you changed to be able to come and start being more successful yourself?
So when I flipped the switch, I went hard, like all in on things, like just all in on cutting out the sport. Like I just shut everything down and went the other way on things. Around 3 months into that, I started meeting coaches, I started meeting coaches. I thought they were crazy. Like, I thought they were like, who are all these positive possibility people? But ultimately I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting all these people. They're saying that this stuff changes their life. Like, I'm trying to change my life. What am I doing? I did a session that spawned me to getting into this coaching program called Accomplishment Coaching that I wish I could put everyone in the world through it, because they don't need to be coaches, but it changes their life. It's like very transformational. And in that, I started to learn other tools, techniques, habits. And I was reading all these books, right? So the first things that I started doing was I started to try to wake up, besides what I already shared, I started to try to wake up earlier and knock out something at the beginning of the day that would make me feel like the day was already a win, right? Going to the gym, going to a yoga class. In New York, I belonged to Equinox, so I would go to both. I'd go to the gym at between 5 and 5:30. I'd work out, and then I'd go to the hot yoga class at the Equinox. And I'm done, and I'm like, well, I kind of already won the day. Like, some people won't do anything, right?
I like that.
And then I would do things like I started carrying a book with me always. So I would read in the morning. Maybe I'd wake up and read before I actually left. I'd read at night before bed, and I'd have a subway book, something that was a little very engaging, that with all the distractions, I could still keep my focus on the subway while I'm reading this book. So those were habits that I put in: morning reading, nighttime reading, day reading, getting some physical win at the beginning of the day. I started meditating. My aunt and my mom were always talking about meditation. My mom had just kind of started, and I was like, I'll try this. Same thing. All these famous people, successful people say they do it. And I found, I did Headspace.
Yeah. Huge app. I love it.
So I started with Headspace, and then I actually found this guy named David G, who has hundreds of free meditations on his website, and they're these 20-minute guided, and I fell in love with that. And I think I meditated every day for 2 years, for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes a day. And some days more if I felt stressed out or whatnot. I think I also would hide in meditation. Well, if I'm meditating, I'm doing something, and I don't have to call those people that I'm supposed to call that I'm terrified to call.
I'm curious. Meditation is something that I feel like I do it in the most unusual way, right? So I'm always when I'm working out, halfway into my workout, I'll be like, 20 minutes just went by. And for me, that's in the zone. And, sometimes I could just look out at the ocean, feel incredibly grateful. Feels like, a solid 5 to 15 minutes, but it really could be 30 seconds. And I'm just I feel better. And I go on. I don't know how did people do a true meditation for 20 minutes. If I sit there for 20 minutes, and I've tried stuff like floating, in the tank for an hour.
So awesome.
Dude, that shit's wild, man. I don't my body's all over the place. I'm losing my senses, but it's really hard for me to let go sometimes. What are some things that you do when you meditate that empower you?
I think, and I have a lot of clients that are I can't meditate. And I think that's and people say this, but I think it's the thing that we're still not hearing is you can't meditate wrong. I mean, by not doing it is wrong, right? Like, and I don't mean wrong judgmentally, but if you sat there and the whole time you thought about all your problems, okay, that doesn't mean you're not meditating. The idea with meditation, and I'm not like the foremost expert on meditation, but everything I've read and studied and practiced myself is you can't turn off your thoughts. They happen. They're like clouds. And your whole job while meditating is to notice the thing that comes into your mind and then let go of it. Mm-hmm. So, I noticed I'm thinking about the laundry. Okay, let it go. I noticed I'm thinking about my kids. Let it go. I notice my back hurts. Can I like be with it and let it go? And so I think that I use guided because it gives me something to like anchor into. I also lie down when I meditate because sitting up, like what I notice is I start to hunch over. I start to like get into my body more, which becomes a distraction. So, and I don't fall asleep when I lie down. So I lie like in like Shavasana, like, dead man's pose or whatever.
I love that pose. And
I put like a pillow under my neck. And if it's loud, I'll put headphones on, or it's like I'll just put my phone on and I'll play and I'm guided meditation or like some bells or something. And I just try to focus on my breath, like practice. So I don't have like but the key is like you're just going to have your thoughts. Like,
yeah, I think that was the biggest like revelation for me was just revelation was the idea that you're not supposed to have darkness. It's not supposed to be no thoughts. It's just like you have a thought and you let it go. But those are good tips. I think laying down, actually, I when I tried doing it sitting up or like in this whatever Buddha pose, I'm uncomfortable and I actually get in my body and I get distracted as well. Yeah. Good tip. So I want to go in, you start changing your entire life. You're feeling better. You're transforming yourself. And now you're like, you know what? I want to do this for other people. But especially today, this is, 5 years ago as you started. But today, there are so many life coaches. There's so many people who are like, I can change your life. And, just pay me $997 and you'll get this. And so how do you actually create a real business that's been so successful? Like, how do you get clients to come in? What are you doing to continually grow the DreamMason?
So first, everyone knows you can't do it for $997. It has to be $1,001.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course.
Like, it's got to be that
mentally.
Right? Yeah, it has to be at that. No, but so. A couple things. One is I'm a huge advocate that training matters in what we do. That yes, anyone can just say they're a coach, right? It's not like saying you're a doctor. Like there's a lot of trouble you'll get into if you just do that. But I have an amazing community of successful coaches around me. And the thing that I notice is the ones that are successful are the ones that invested in the training and not the training on like the manual of how to be a coach. Did the work themselves. They invested in like transforming their own lives. Like I said, I did a year-long program that had over 250 hours of in-person training that transformed me as a human being and taught me skills to do that with other people. And I'm not saying that you have to do that to become a great coach. I'm sure there are plenty that are. But what I notice is, most people that are going to say they're a coach aren't going to make it. Like most businesses are out of business in 5 years, right? And being a coach is as hard as that, if not harder. And so I didn't know that at the beginning. I got lucky that I put myself into something like that. But over time, I've seen the people that continue to put in the investing in themselves and continue to train themselves. I still have I have a group of 4 other coaches that we hop on calls like once a week and we like review each other's calls. Like we listen to ourselves with clients and give feedback. And the clients know, right? They know they're being recorded. They know. But I get to hear like other coaches at different levels than me say, hey, that was about you. You weren't like tending to the client. That was your agenda. Or did you notice you didn't ask, they said this and you just like stepped over it and went way past it. So I'm like constantly being developed, not in that sense, but also I have my own coach. I think that's the number one thing. If you're a coach and you don't have a coach, like, and you're a potential client, like run for the hills. Like it's like a doctor who doesn't see doctors. That's weird. There's something that it just doesn't make sense. So
you don't believe in what you're selling is, I think that's what usually it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And that in that ability to be able to say, yeah, like, no, I believe in this so much that I invest in it myself. that's the reason why I want to help you do it, as opposed to I believe in this so you can pay my bills, right? And that's the difference.
My coach, at times, my coach has been more than my rent at different periods, different coaches, whatnot. And that program that I took was as expensive as some college tuition, and all that money is the best money I ever spent. My life is better, vastly better than it's ever been. And not just in the sense of I'm making money, but I'm like happier, I'm fulfilled. I'm like, I wrote and published a book, which was like a lifelong dream. You know, I have a podcast that's over 100 episodes, which I never would have had enough commitment to do any of those things before. I quit everything before. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when we look at like the business aspect, my first year as a coach, I made like no money. I didn't, you know, I'm like, for me, it was about I would coach anyone for almost anything because I wanted reps.
Yeah.
So like, hey, you'll pay me $100 a month. Great. I'll do it. And I will try to be the best coach you ever had, because that's the only way I can get better, right? Is to practice. And then as I evolved, I started to be like, oh, I like working with people like this. I don't like working with people like this. I'm good with these situations. I'm not so good. How can I improve in that area? And I also showed up every day like it was a job. Even though I didn't have an office to go to, it was like I start working at like 9 a.m. I have a calendar that runs my life. If you saw my calendar, like it is basically from 8 or 7 a.m. until 5 or 6 p.m. It is completely like blocked out with like appointments. And if they're not clients, they're ways to either get clients or become a better coach, maybe podcasting, writing books, whatnot. But I looked at it like this is a job. And if I had a boss, what would that boss say about how I was showing up to work every day?
Sure. So you start getting out clients, you know, you're doing the reps. I like what you said there, because everything is training and you got to get practice. So you start off slow. And also, too, coaching, people like, oh, yeah, I'm going to coach people and they're going to pay me a bunch of money. But most businesses don't make a lot of money in the first year anyways, whether you're coaching or you're selling coffee mugs. So the truth is that people have to approach it like a business. What did you do once you got the reps in that enabled you to actually run it like a real business that makes money?
I mean, I think it's still it's still evolving, right? Mm-hmm. It's still, I'm in my, like, this is my like 5-year anniversary, right? So I'm going.
Which, by the way, congratulations, because statistically, I think 80% of businesses fail before 5 years. So now you're in the top 20% already. So congratulations.
Thank you. And it was not, dude, I made less than 20 grand my first year as a coach. Like all in, less than $20,000 for a whole year. I was living in New York City making less than $20,000.
You could not live in New York City.
So basically that paid my rent, right? Like for the year. And I didn't have a lot of savings. Like when I started, I had barely any money. So I actually decided I was going to use my credit cards to float me, because I was like, I believe in myself this much that I need to give myself an opportunity. And I also knew, and like people listening that are like, oh, I should do this. You got to make that decision for yourself, right? Like I knew for me, I had to go all in. I knew that if I was half in, half out, that was a back door and I would slip out of it. Like if I was like, oh, I'll bartend 3 nights a week to like, you know, for me, that would have been self-sabotage. I had to put myself like in the fire. And so year one, I think I did like 18 grand. And there were a lot of days where I would like call friends, call my parents and be like, I can't make it. I'm not good enough, you know, and people like my dad would be like, just go up to the plate again, like keep swinging. And my mom would more be with the feelings of me. And my dad was like, just keep getting up there and swing the bat. Yeah. And my mentors and the community around me was super supportive. And I think that's what gave me the ability to keep going. And I did so if I look at like what I did to grow the business, first off, one of the best things I've ever done was join networking groups. There's a lot of like really successful entrepreneurs out there that say like, don't do networking groups. But for me, coaching is like a relationship business. Like I have to be in relationship with you. And if you get to know me, like me, and trust me, you will refer me. Yeah. And my business is probably like 90% referral. Like I'm not the coach that you see on Instagram that you're like, ooh, I'm going to hire this guy. I think in 5 years, 3 people have hired me from like social media. All my business comes from like, you're like, dude, my buddy owns a legal practice and he's successful and stressed out and he feels like stuck and he doesn't know what to do. And I'm like, yeah, let me introduce us. So I think like building relationships and then doing really scary things like picking up the phone and calling 50 people. And I was never like, I'm going to call 50 people in a day. But over the course of a week, I'm going to call 50 people, people from high school, people from college, people that I used to work with, and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing now. This is what it's done for me. Like really sharing authentically and trying to also like learn what they're up to and what they're doing. And then are you open to like doing a session with me? Or do you know anyone who would do a session with me? And then like also like giving it away.
Yeah.
Right? If I give you a session and you get value, you might want more. If you don't get value, then great. I got to practice. You got whatever you got, and we go on our way. No harm, no foul.
Sure.
Those two things are huge. Where I am now is becoming, how do I like even blow it up more? So how do I, when you're starting, it's like, how do I get clients?
Yeah. Then
when you start to actually get clients, you hit a point where you're like, well, how many clients do I want? I don't want 30 clients. That's exhausting. Like on the
it's funny because like I interviewed Jarek Robbins. He does
yeah.
So I interviewed him, and he was talking about how he did coaching, and his day was completely full of coaching. But then you max out at eventually you can no longer coach people. You have only so many hours in the day, just like any job. So he was starting to look at scalability, and also now you get to choose who you end up coaching. Yeah. He ended up doing an academy, an online course and stuff like that. So I'm curious, like what's your game plan for your scalability as you continue to grow past this 5 years?
Same. So, I like to have between like 10 and like 15 clients. Like I'm good with 10, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to make a little more money, or people excite me, right? Like, oh, I really want to work with them.
Yeah.
So 12 is kind of my magic like number. And if I'm excited, I'll go up to, but I won't go beyond that. Like, I just don't have the bandwidth for it. It's like the amount I want to say I give to my clients is exhausting, in a good way, right? Like I don't mean that in a bad way. And
how many hours are you doing this?
Like an hour with each person.
A week.
So some clients I have some clients 3 times a month and some clients 4 times a month.
Okay.
So it depends on like how they work with me. And then writing books is that's kind of like the passion thing for me. So this book, Fictional Authenticity, was my first one. I want to write 9 more books in the next 9 years. Like I want to write a book a year.
Just go right here, man. I love that. Just fucking massive action right there. Like I'm not even going to write one.
No.
I wrote, thank you for putting my book up here, but like I wrote one book. I'm like, I want to rip my hair out, man. It was such a tough experience. And I learned a lot. I definitely want to write more. My girlfriend wants to kill me when I say that. If she listens to this, she's like shaking her head. But now you know how to write one. And I just love that, though. It's like, I'm not going to just write one book, especially if it's your passion. And then you make this crazy big goal to write one every year for the next decade. So I just props to you, man.
Thanks, man. And no, it's terrifying. I have ideas. I'm working on the second and third one. But it's, I have the same, even though I know how to get out of my own way, like I still get in my own way. That's why I have my own coach. And I have support structures, time where I write with other people that are writing things. Like I have all these things, and it's still challenging at times. So that's one is I want to write books. Another thing that I'm working on is I actually have a course, Fictional Authenticity, the course, which isn't out yet, but I don't know when you'll release this, but it'll be out in the next like month or so. And it's kind of a lot of people don't read. So I made like a course version with videos and worksheets. And people that do that course, actually the big bonus of that course is if you buy the course, you actually get one-on-one time with me. So I'm not just selling a course like go watch the videos, good luck. It's like buy the course, do the course, and then you get some one-on-one time with me that's built into the sale with the course.
Huge value then too there, obviously. So what are you looking at? Like, are you selling it is it part of the book, or is it like a couple $100? What do you do? Well,
so we're still figuring out all the details, and if it blows up, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because how many one-on-ones can I actually do?
Right.
Because it's my first course, I'm like, you know what? It's a good problem to have. Like, hopefully I can't manage all the things. You know what? And for me, it's like first course. Like, I hope I learned something. Yeah. I hope the next course I do is even better and provides more value and changes people's lives even more. This one is like, I needed to make a course. I need to figure out how to do it. And I didn't do it all myself. I hired someone. But we did it together, right? I had to make the videos and create the content. So that's another aspect of the business, right? Is Fictional Authenticity, the course. We're creating a Fictional Authenticity workbook that you could go along with the book. So if you just wanted to do a workbook in the book, I have obviously the DreamMason Podcast, which continues to grow. I'm actually working on creating another podcast with two people who have been guests on my podcasts on like another topic that we're working on together. And then I'm also trying to help other people do what I've done. So the studio that we're sitting in, I just took it over as like the director of the media company. And I'm trying to craft and create more podcasts and shows that are personal development oriented, but all different spectrums of it, not just like coaches, and help people that say like you show up and you're like, I'm a coach, I want to have a show. Great. Nobody cares. How do we create a show for you that makes it super unique and authentic, that it speaks to, even if 20 people listen, you're psyched to do it every week because it's like true for you. Right. So I'm helping people create like that. It's almost like I feel like I have like a audio version of like a Netflix, and I got to create all the shows for it.
That's dope. I like that.
So I'm working with people on that. And then the same thing goes with that is maybe publishing some other books out of the media company also.
Yeah.
In the same way, either helping people do it or people that, getting a book published. I mean, you and I, like, it costs money. We're not making money from this
I know.
thing.
People think, oh, man, you sold a couple hundred books. Like, yeah, I did. It's still in the hole.
And like, look, I don't know if, I guess I'm in the hole, like because you invest, but like if you want to go publish a book and have somebody else do it, it's like thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely the easiest route for me. And honestly, it's a passion project, right? Mm-hmm. And it's and like you, it's a message that you want to get out to the world and you want to share. So it's worth it. And for that too, I'm curious, like Fictional Authenticity, like why should people get that book? What is it going to help them with?
So I think it's important that people see our vulnerabilities. See like me saying I made $18,000. Like that's terrible, right? Especially in like New York City or LA. And
barely survive.
Yeah. And I think that like we often in the society we live in spend so much time on like just seeing the successes of people that we don't get to hear like, man, like what did they overcome? What did they battle through? So in the book, I take people through my journey of transforming my own life. And I take them through the different, like there's a chapter on like trust and faith. And it's my story of me battling with my issues with religion and spirituality and like growing up one way and not wanting it to be that way, and then how I brought that into my adulthood. And there's chapters on commitment and integrity and all these things. So I layer in my story, but I do that so people can see what it looks like from outside. And then I give people the opportunity in each chapter to answer like questions for themselves. And, right? You don't have to, right? If you want to just read the book. But in every chapter, there's like, where do you do this? Ask yourself these questions. So someone could basically do a version of a version of working with me just through the book.
Right.
And, you don't have somebody there checking your blind spots and like seeing if you're actually doing it. But you could learn a lot about yourself and become a lot more authentic just by going through and answering the questions I pose in the book.
And then also too, just with the book, you're creating the workbook and the course now. So, and I was curious too, like you talked about creating the course, like that's something that it is huge. I mean, that business and the online world is exploding right now. Like what platform did you use to use it, to create it? And like, how are you able to do that? And like, what are the steps,
So I'm using Kajabi.
Okay.
And I hired someone because I'm not I built my own website. I could probably maybe figure it out. But at a certain point, we're talking about scalability, right? Like you can't do everything yourself, right? I used to do the podcast myself in my apartment. Now there's a studio. There's people outside that are helping us. If you want to grow, you got to invest even before you're ready, right? And then you grow into it, and then you do it again and again. So Kajabi is a course. I asked people for recommendations on people that help build courses. I got some recommendations. I had a conversation with somebody. They were like, this is what I do. This is how it works. I hired them. And then basically they told me what to do, which was like, I need you to make this many videos. We'll do videos with your voice and slides. We'll do some with your face. We'll we'll create the workbook from there. And then basically I have to go and like check everything to make sure it fits.
Got it.
The part that I think is important to share in all this is I'm super comfortable doing this. Like, you can put me on a camera, like with people. If you put a camera on me all by myself, like just like me and a camera, and you're like, give a talk about, I get so grumpy and weird. And I would like make these videos and I'd be like, this is crap. And I would just like, I can't do this. I'm like, I suck at this. And there's something, because you're just with it, right? I'm with you. We get to like hang out. This is not the big deal. But with a camera, there's only you, and for me at least, all I did was judge myself.
Totally. Yeah.
And
every time I record something, I'm like, I can't even watch myself afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm like, oh, I need to re-record. And then it takes forever.
Right. And that was the hardest. So what I actually did was I got my girlfriend to basically, like,
she stood next to the camera?
Yeah. And like, it was like, try to like talk, but it was still hard. Like, there's a lot I'm learning about, right? Still. And I think hopefully we continue to always learn. The next course I do, I think I would invest in like an actual studio, like have a crew, like a limited crew, right? It's not a production, but so I can be with other humans and it's not just like me in my own shit, in my own head.
That's great advice. I'm working on a course right now, just like the very early stages of it. So I appreciate that. One of the big things is with Unleash Success is the 80-20 rule. I'm sure you've heard of that before. Mm-hmm. Basically, what are the biggest actions to get us the biggest results? So what do you think is one action people should take today to get the most results out of life? And I think for you and with your coaching practice, I really am curious what you think the biggest tip is for fulfillment. I mean, it's one thing to follow a guideline step by step to be successful, but it's another thing to actually enjoy your life. So what do you think people should do today?
I think the first thing would be to start asking themselves what they actually want. And at the same time, noticing the should conversations. Should go to college. I should have this job. I should get married. I should have kids. And just notice it. Like, don't make it wrong. You don't have to, but like notice the default conversations in your mind. And when you start, it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize, like, I'm just like programmed like this.
Yeah.
And then what do you actually want? And the way I do it with clients sometimes is like, hey, let's just play unrealistically. If money didn't matter, if time didn't matter, and you didn't ever have to be held to any commitments, what would you do? Where would you spend your time? What, where would you live? Where would you work? Like, and then you just start brainstorming there, right? And people get to start saying what they want. And then it's like, well, do you really want this? Or is it like more of that should? Like, I should want that. So I think for me, like, I think that's the biggest thing for anyone first is noticing the autopilot thoughts, behaviors, and then start looking at, okay, like if I can put that down for a second, what do I want? And then the next step is like, okay, if you get to the end of that, right? I want to write 10 books in 10 years. So from the end, who would I have to be to write 10 books in 10 years? I'd have to be crazy committed and consistent. From consistent and committed, what action would I have to take? Mm-hmm. It's like the reverse engineering versus I want to write 10 books in 10 years. Well, I better start writing. That's daunting and impossible.
Yeah, it's so scary. I love that, man. So, Alex, this has been a great interview, and I really, really appreciate it. Where can everybody find you online?
TheDreamMason.com is my website, and you can get to the podcast episodes, you can get to the book, you can get to me, everything from there. So TheDreamMason.com. And then I would say probably Instagram. I don't really tweet. That's not my thing. I'm on Facebook, but Instagram, I like interact with people and like, I don't know, I like Instagram. It's a good distraction. Nice. So my Instagram is Inspirational Alex.
Cool. So we kind of touched on it already, actually, which is funny, but you're an inspirational guy. So always the last question I ask is, what is your next level of success? Although we've talked about it, I'm wondering, with everything that you're doing, maybe if you want to take us to the next year or the next 10 years, whatever it is for you, what do you think your next level of success is?
Ooh, well, it's a TED Talk is up there for sure.
Nice.
TED Talk. I'm terrified. I'm not terrified of actually the talking part. I'm terrified of the process of like actually writing the thing, and is it good enough? And do I even have something important enough for a TED Talk? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the terrifying piece. That's next level. And then The other big thing is like workshops. Not just doing like a course where people do it on their own, but creating like corporate workshops and workshops where people can come in and do the work with me, right? I can actually impact 20, 30, 40 people at a time in the same room, right? In the same space. Like that's not something I've ever done in this space. I've done like a few little things, but not as a like, hey, those are my big things for 2020. That would get me out of my comfort zone.
I love it. That's awesome. And the TED Talk, too, is something I always wanted to do myself, and you re-inspired me right there. So thank you.
I'm scared. I'm like scared thinking about it.
All right, Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. It was awesome.
If you enjoyed the show and learned something of value, the one ask that I have is please go subscribe, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you leave us a 5-star rating and review, that absolutely helps us get our message out there. Each week, I'm going to continue to interview amazing people, and we're going to break down their tools and strategies to help get you real results. Feel free to visit the website, unleashsuccess.com, and subscribe to our newsletter so you get updates each week. And remember, knowing is not enough. Knowledge alone is not power. Action is. Because action is the only way you're going to get the results you want in life and truly live the life of your dreams. So take some action, subscribe to the podcast today, and get ready to unleash success in you.